Hello and welcome to AIL TV. Tonight we have got another interesting program. As always, our presenter David Otto from CISO stepped in, stepped up. He has got two distinguished guests here who have got the knowledge of global terrorism. Sorry, I just skipped it there. So, as always, you're not going to be watching me. Of course, you're going to be watching David Otto. So, David Otto, you are on.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph. Thank you to the Africans in London TV viewers. We really want to appreciate that you've taken your time to continuously follow this program. As we said, the purpose of this program is to ensure that governments, non-governmental organizations, the local population has the best knowledge, from a combination of experts that we continuously bring on board, so that you can make the right decision, you can have the right procedures and solutions, in terms of looking at some of the issues that we face today in terrorism, some of the issues that we face in insurgency. Today's topic is very clear. We want to look at the foundation of ISIS, which is the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. This so-called caliphate has collapsed, but the ideology still remains. But again, we want to look at the differences between the ISIS ideology and the Al Qaeda ideology. What is the source of this ideology and what does it mean? Because a lot of people talk about the collapse of the Islamic State, but again, the ideology remains. So if the Islamic State can be physically defeated, how can we then defeat the ideology, which is the foundation on which the Islamic State and Al Qaeda builds upon? This is the foundation which these groups use to recruit people. They use this foundation to, pushing their propaganda. They use this foundation to claim that there's one God, there is one nation, and there is one ruler. So the three-in-one Trinity. But again, how do we distinguish from the true, ideology to the one which is, the twisted ideology, the ideology that requires members of the public to become monsters, to become killers of their fellow human beings. So we thought we should bring this topic to you today. And, we brought you the best of our guests that we could ever find, people that have a very deep knowledge of what this ideology is all about. They would give you their best. But of course, this is just a 1-hour program, and we would not have enough time to go into the nitty-gritties. But these experts are always available for you to have conversations with. You can always send your questions to us and we'll pass it on to them. So today's discussion is to make sure that we understand the ideology that ISIS and Al Qaeda espouses. This ideology is being used by terrorist organizations in Africa like Boko Haram. The same ideology is being used by Al-Shabaab in Somalia. The same is being used by the Islamic State of the Greater Sahel in Mali. The same by, Al Qaeda's faction, Akim, and all the other factions that are operating within Mali. We've got the Islamic State of West Africa province in northern Nigeria, using the same ideology and claiming that this is the ideology that each and everyone should follow. They want to create an ideal state, they say, an Islamic state, in order for everyone to be ruled under the Ummah. So I think it's important, it's very important for us to have experts who can really tell you what is it that this ideology is all about? How did it come into being? What is the origin of it? And how do you distinguish between these various ideologies that are going around? So I think, ladies and gentlemen, you will be hearing from my experts today. I have, a very famous individual here with me, Husamuddin Meyer, who has worked a lot in this area. He deals a lot with countering violent extremism in and outside prisons and correctional facilities. He has been involved in the de-radicalization and disengagement of several former jihadists. He understands the ideology, and he looks exclusively at how governments and various stakeholders can be able to counter this ideology. Ladies and gentlemen, let me bring in Husamuddin Meyer. Thank you for coming. I know you're all the way in Germany. First of all, I would like to start with you because you're quite far away from myself and Hanif. Now, we talk about ISIS ideology and Al Qaeda's ideology. We know that this ideology has been, used in other jihadist groups in Africa, in the Middle East, to talk about the same thing. Now, I want you to, really talk about the origin. Where do they get this ideology from? Because this is what they use as a foundation. And how is that ideology being distributed to the rest of the world? If I may, I'll give you the 3 minutes, first, and then I'll get to Hanif, please. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good evening to everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be upon you. And sorry for my bad English. I hope to be able to explain something in very short words. This ideology is, if we break it down to very simple words, is using 3 steps. They are starting to create disgust in the heart of the people to other people, so they can afterwards declare them unbelievers, and by declaring them unbelievers, they can easily use violence against them. And the first one who was really doing this in history was Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, who was creating the Wahhabi movement and who changed the Islamic religion from something which brings you from darkness to light into something which brings you from light to darkness. That is what they are doing. So I said very often, and I clearly say it, and I repeat it, that these movements are the opposite of Islam, because Islam means, etymologically means, it brings you to inner peace. And spreading peace by saying Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you, is one of the most important thing in Islam. What they are spreading is terror. So they are spreading terror in the hearts of the people. They are leaving them behind in a bad state and not leaving them behind in a good state. And if you look at the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and all these lightful followers, you will see evidently that this is the opposite of what it was at the beginning. And it's still existing, and especially if we are talking about Africa, I'm very sad. I spent many months in West Africa, and the concept of peace is very much rooted in all the societies of West Africa. And now I'm very sad to see what happened and what is changing now in all these countries like Mali, like Niger, and there is a battle. You can see a battle between the traditional Islam and the new Islam, which is coming from Saudi Arabia. And even if not all this, the Islam from Saudi Arabia is extremist, but the roots can easily be used to use violence. Yes, this is.
Yeah, and thank you, Husamuddin, for that. Another question I wanted to ask you alongside that is, we know that there is a link between religion and politics, especially when it comes to, when you look at the roots of Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab, it's Wahhabism, and how that was linked directly to the Saudi political system. Now, is that the methodology behind having a state, or the so-called Islamic State? Isn't that, is that something that you link to the politics of religion, if I may say, or the politics of Islam?
Yeah, it's a very difficult topic, because if you look into the history and you see that the Muslims had a caliphate, and they tried to regain the caliphate, and that's also a reason why this kind of movements will always exist, because many Muslims want to rebuild the caliphate and to have a just ruler and not a corrupt ruler like today, which is influenced much by the big forces in the world and by the secret services of other countries. That is a very difficult topic. And that's why it's very difficult to discuss about politics. Even in prison, I work in prison for 12 years now, and I'm dealing with a lot of things like this, discussions like this, and if you look about the colonized states, if they work with the Russians or they work with the Americans, capitalism or communism, both of them are not very good for the country. So there's a lot of injustice in the world and in their practice, and that is also one of the reasons why people are joining these kind of movements. Very often, the ideological point is only one of the sources, one of the reasons, but the injustice is another one. Yeah. So maybe we can go deeper into it after then. How I deal with this kind of things.
Yeah, thank you. Let me get to Hanif Qadir, because Hanif has what I describe as an operational experience. Hanif, now, do you see a difference between the ideology that ISIS is using and the ideology that Al Qaeda is using, and also why is there a difference between the Sunni and the Shias in terms of an ideological perspective? Because I think that's a foundation which we need to understand from the politics side.
Yeah, there are complete differences, especially between the Shia and the Sunni, and also in between when you ISIS used the ideology, Al Qaeda used the ideology, Boko Haram, Al Shabaab, they use the same ideology. I think you will find if you had that directly to them, they will be offended. Each one of them will be offended that they are being classified as the same. Right. So there are fundamental differences within them. But let me go back to what Husamuddin mentioned, and I'll explain the root causes based on what is true and what is from history, what was prophesied, but also looking at the ideology of ISIS in particular, and then following on what has been adopted by Al Qaeda, Boko Haram, and Al Shabaab, and so forth, with regards to the evidence base that I've managed to gather over 18 years working with individuals with this ideology. So to begin with, as prophesied by the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Kharijites, this is what we are supposed to be calling them. If we look at what Husamuddin, the brother, said respectively, is that it stems from Abdullah bin Wahab. If we say that this is as far back as it goes, then there are millions, absolutely millions of followers who ascribe to the teachings and the fundamental principles that Abdullah bin al-Wahhab espoused. So it doesn't go that far. In fact, it goes beyond that. It goes way back to the time of just after the Prophet ﷺ. So as we were prophesied, but also they appeared in two waves. The first as a revolutionary Sabite, the followers of Abdullah bin Saba. And they created a movement against the third caliph of Islam, Uthman radiallahu anh. Thereafter, overtly, they appeared as the Kharijites against the fourth caliph, Ali radiallahu anh. Mm-hmm. They expelled the Muslims from Islam on account of major sins, which we know as Muslims, even if you commit a major sin, we still cannot excommunicate them. Yeah. But nevertheless, they expelled Muslims from Islam on account of major sins. They revolted against the rulers with arms and incited the masses to fight against them. So what we are seeing now in different parts of the world, in Iraq, in Syria, in Africa, in other parts of the world, we are seeing that this is a movement that is rebelling against the rulers. And if we look at the followers of Abdullah bin Wahab, who were mainly from Saudi, we would have if this was the case, that it actually stems from Abdullah bin Wahab, which we refer to as Wahhabis, then we would have the majority of the Saudis rebelling against the leaders,
Yeah.
which we don't have just yet. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is that it goes way back, and it starts off from the Sabbaites, the Abdullah bin Sabah, and we were warned. The biggest problem that we have as Muslims in the world is that we were given clear warnings about these movements, about this ideology.
Yeah.
And we allowed this ideology to fester amongst our ranks. One, I agree with Husamuddin, is that when we look at the Wahhabi movement, this hasn't been cleared. The ideology of Ibn al-Wahhab is something that actually contradicts and actually goes against the Kharijites. But what we have found, and this is why I said this is a very complex discussion.
Yes, you've said that before. Yeah.
Like it goes back centuries, and it has to have scholarly involvement in this at the highest level.
Yes.
And from amongst the different scholars from around the world, from different schools of thoughts, because the reason why it become more complex is because we have different, within the Sunni sect, we have different schools of thought, we have different understandings of Islam, which all, in fact, don't align themselves with the Shia ideology.
The seal ring symbol of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which they put on the, and they hijacked La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. They hijacked all these symbols which are now connotated with a negative image. And they also jihad, and also Islam, and all words Sharia, all these words are now connotated with negative things. And what I wanted to, I absolutely agree with with Mr. that these kind of movements were there since the beginning, like the Khawarijit. And but the problem, why I pointed out Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, is that they hijacked the whole Islamic movement. They hijacked the centrals of Islam, Mecca and Medina, and they spread with all the money from the oil. They spread this ideology all around the world, and now Sunni Islam is believed, very often repeated in the press, that Saudi Arabia is the Sunni main country, and that's what I don't want to accept, because before Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Sunnism was something completely different. And as Mr. Hanif pointed out also, and he mentioned a very famous hadith and important hadith, that these people, the Khawarij, they seem to follow Islam perfectly. They pray and they fast better maybe than the others, but the Quran is not going through the throat. What does it mean? They only repeat the words, but the words doesn't reach the heart. And if the words doesn't reach the heart, like, for example, if you say every Muslim should act with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, in the name of Allah, the merciful, the most merciful, the most munificent. And if you don't feel this mercy in the heart of the people and in the acting of the people, then there is something very wrong. Then the words of the Prophet ﷺ and the words of Allah didn't go from the mouth to the heart. And that kind of teaching is it what was spread around the world, because now the people, they are not anymore working on their heart. They are killing the heart. The ideology which is spread now is killing the heart, and is leading the people to not anymore have a feeling for humans, and to dehumanize. Because how can you do these cruelties if your heart is not dead? And that is one of the main elements which we are also trying to attack or to heal.
Yeah. So Husamuddin, do you think that from your experience, I have met people who have been members of terrorist organizations who have been they've called themselves that they've killed people before, and they explained that the ideology was not well explained to them. Yourself, you've dealt with a lot of repentant foreign fighters, repentant ISIS members. Hanif Qadir has done the same, continuously do so, both of you. Do you think there is a problem of interpretation of the Quran, of the Hadith, and this has been exploited in such a way that the bigger picture of Islam is being painted as nobody knows which one is the good one, whether this is the real Islam or this is the bad one, because it all looks the same. Is that your experience?
Yes, it's a misinterpretation of Islam, of course. And if you look only with these eyes and with these ears, you will not maybe see the difference. But if you look with the heart, you will see the difference. You will feel the difference. Yeah. That's why we say you only see good with the heart.
Now we have foreign fighters who have are leaving their countries. They are coming towards Europe. They are coming towards Africa. You've met some of them in your work. How do you advise to, if you're just looking at the ideology alone? I know it's not sufficient to look at the ideology alone, but let's talk about the ideology. How do you advise governments to tackle this ideology? You can still talk about making sure that other political issues have been resolved, but let's look at this ideology. What is your take? How do we go forward?
Yeah, we have not yet mentioned one aspect of the thing, and this was very much used from the Islamic State, from the Satanic State, I would call it, by attracting the young Muslims by this name, Islamic State, and by calling it like this, they are focusing on the identity of the people. And if we don't accept the young Muslims, second generation, third generation people from anywhere else, if we don't accept them and embrace them in our country and giving them also their rights and the power and not discriminating them, we are pushing them to join another movement and to act maybe against the government.
Yeah.
And now, if we come back to the ideology, the ideology is used by this kind of political movements to make them stronger and to make them more easily use violence. And so, I think one of the very big steps is done now by directly putting a bad image on this kind of movements, because before it was still even Wahhabism, which is the basis of all these terroristic movements, was the real Islam. Before, I learned in 30 years ago, I learned this in university. This is the original Islam, and this is one of the big problems. Now we come back to say, no, this Wahhabism is something else. It is not the original Islam. And this is already a good start. And if we are talking, of course, about the work in prisons, we should very much be careful in choosing the people who are working there. And 10 years ago, they were taking everybody who is calling himself imam to work in prison, and that, of course, is it's a very dangerous thing, because especially in prison, you can very easily influence the people and use them as weapons, as this is done everywhere in the world. And if you look at the terrorists, you will see that most of the terrorist attacks are done by people coming out of prison.
Yeah.
As everybody knows who is looking in this subject.
When we talk about abandoning some of these foreign fighters, not bringing them back, are we pushing them to the jihadist platforms? Is it a trick in the books of the jihadists?
Yes, of course. That's what they want. They want to divide the world into these people and people. Yeah. And if we try to gain back to gain back the hearts of the people, then we have done a good job. Like these young people, I saw many of them. They left Germany in the age of 15 or 16 or 17, and they were in an identity crisis. And then they are thrown out, and not one of them who came back I worked with was still holding on this ideology. Not one of them. They also said that they had made a big mistake, and if you work with them in the ideology, and they say that the real Islam is not what they are preaching, but the real Islam is something else, then you can win their hearts and take them back into the society. Yeah. And that's one aspect we haven't mentioned yet, which is very important especially for the work we are doing. It is the aspect of rage or unbalanced inner state, and that is the main focus I'm working with the people. I'm trying to balance them, to give them inner peace, to give them a good state, because if they have a good state, they are not willing to do something bad, neither terrorism, neither something else. If they are in a good state, then they are not nuisible. How you say?
Yes, they're vulnerable. Yeah.
They're not vulnerable. Yeah, they're not vulnerable.
Vulnerable, yes.
Not vulnerable, but not damaging others, not damaging the society.
They don't contaminate. Yes, they don't contaminate other people.
Yeah. I worked with one. There was one guy in the prison for 5 years, and he was when he came, when he entered the prison, he was very, very unbalanced and full of rage, and then after 5 years, he was a very, very good person, reflecting upon his own deeds and his own actings. And he said, "Now I understood what Islam is all about." And he said, "When I entered the prison, I was full of hate, and I hated myself. And if you hate yourself, you are able to do anything. You're capable to bomb yourself and bomb others." That is the main reason.
And one more question before I get to Hanif, because he's now back with us. How do you know who's a good imam? What are the key things you should look at? I mean, just very few.
Yeah, just very short. That's what I'm always advising to the responsible people. I say, try it. And if the people are more balanced and more peaceful after the work, after 1 week, after 1 month, you can easily see. But if the people are even more uncomfortable and more in rage and more, then you can see that the influence of the imam is not very good.
So you judge by their work.
That's a practical experience, experimental, empirical choice. But you can also say that the people who are more focused on inner development and cleaning of the heart are much better for this work than the people who are working on a political side, because the political side is always a very delicate question, and especially in prison.
Yeah, but Husamuddin, what you understand is that when you want to select an imam as a government, what you also don't want to do is to do it in such a way that you want to try it if it works, or if it doesn't work. Now, if you are on the panel of the government, and you have 10 imams in front of you, how do you select which ones you give a chance? Because you don't just want to give everybody a chance, do you?
No, that's true. It's not easy to say, because of course he has to have some qualifications, and because otherwise he will not be accepted as imam from the inmates. But what you can try to see if the energy of the people is good. If you can see that is very easy. Usually, it's very easy to see if the energy of a man is good or not. Otherwise, if you want to look at the ideology, I would not take Salafist, I would not take Wahhabist in prison, and I would not even take Deobandi people. I would try to choose people from Sufi movement, from Sufi brotherhoods, which are trained on the work of the heart, which are trained to work with the heart of the people, to bring them inner peace, to bring them balance, to bring them positive attitudes, and to put out hatred and put out jealousy and to put out greed and these qualities we talked about at the beginning of the of this
program. Yes, so, but Hanif, let me bring you in. Do you agree with that, or you think you have a different point?
I completely disagree with due respect to the brother.
I just try to approach the people by a very human way and a very merciful way, and I have not. Of course, sometimes the people say because of maybe some dress, they say, I will not accept you. And then they will wait 1 or 2 years until they speak to you. Of course, that happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But in experience, it's much more important to have a good approach. And of course, I'm not telling. I'm not exposing even this my orientation. It's no need for this. The deeds are speaking for themselves.
Because
if I'm saying one word to you, Mr. Hanif, how do you expect from the governments to know exactly what Quran and Sunnah is and what the authentic Islam is when they are choosing the imams? They cannot. That's why I gave a point of orientation. I gave because if you know that somebody is from Salafi origin or Wahhabi origin, you will not have good results in the prison if you choose them. That's what
yes. Hanif, answer that question. Yes, Hanif, go ahead.
Okay, now I will differ on that. My argument is, you don't need to have any label as a Muslim. Why do we have to have a label if we are following the Quran and the Sunnah as we are instructed to by our Creator? And correct me if I'm wrong. We are instructed to by our Creator to follow the Quran and the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, if we then choose to label others or label ourselves, then we are doing something fundamentally wrong.
What's the criteria you would use, Hanif? Because you've mentioned that, and you and I have talked about solutions and solutions. What is the criteria that you'd use if you were presented with 10 imams? Because as you said, this is a key problem, and I've spoken to a lot of governments that have the same issue. I've witnessed the same issue. How do you do this selection process?
So I would ask the questions clearly. There is no beating around the bush, because first of all, many governments, they have a lot of community engagement advisors. They have a lot of information about and intelligence from the police. Look, in the UK, we had the Muslim Contact Unit, MCU. People like Chris Barry, Noel War, there's a few others. I can't remember the names. Abid Raja. This was a unit that was formed by special branch. It was called the Muslim Contact Unit. Their job was to go out into the country and identify imams and individuals who could support the counter-violent extremism programs, who would have the credibility and would also be influential. Now, we put the question straight. Do you follow any kind of school of thought? Are you from a Deobandi school of thought? Are you from a Wahhabi school of thought? Are you from a Salafi school of thought? We would ask those questions clearly. What actually happened was we had the Quilliam Foundation and a few others that jumped on board and said, don't work with the Salafis, don't work with the Deobandis, don't work with so-and-so. And we had one of the best programs in the world that was shelved by the government because they got nervous, they got cold feet. And that program was run by an organization called Sirat. And they had people who were from a Salafi background, they had people who were from a Deobandi background, from all different schools of thought. They had people working in them. Also, those very same people who had either reverted to Islam in prison or converted at some point in their life. But also, all of them had criminal backgrounds. So they knew the prison system. They knew the criminal space. They knew the ideological space. But we never labeled them as Salafi, Wahhabi, or something. But what happened, unfortunately, the Quilliam, because the leader of the organization was a guy that was from Salafi. And that program got shelved. And you can speak to Simon and a few others. It was one of the most brilliant programs and most effective programs in the world. We haven't had anything like that since.
Yeah,
Why?
So,
because
Yes, I get your point, Hanif.
Because we chose to label and tarnish others, and the problem we've got is that the space is so big.
Yeah.
The human space is so big that it would accommodate every school of thought, and it must. But there are certain individuals that have been ostracizing other ideological groups, and that's where the problem is. The government does not know now who to choose. But what they do know is they don't want to work with Salafis. Why?
Yeah. So Husamuddin, do you have that as your own personal experience where there is a there are conflicts between who is going to be the best imam? Now, I know that you've advised a lot of governments in terms of criteria, which are not simply based on Salafism or Wahhabism, but you've talked also about people's the countenance of imams, what they believe in. Is this a very complex subject? Which as Hanif said.
Yes, this is a very complex subject, of course, and it's very difficult to say who you could choose, and that's why I said at the beginning, try, and you will see the results. But I'm not a fan of, telling that I'm a simple Muslim and I have no label and nothing. Usually, if the people asking me who you follow, I say directly and I say explicitly, and I'm a fan of clarity. But
Right.
what I say that is I'm not approaching the inmates and say that I don't like this and I don't like that and I'm excluding everybody else of Islam and I'm following this and this is the only right way and this and that. No, I'm just approaching them like a simple
provider,
man, and I try to do a good job. And if the people are asking questions, then I'm answering.
Okay.
Like I want to give an example of a car. If you say that you want to buy a car and there's written only car on the car, and you don't know what is inside, if it's a good car or not. But if it is written Mercedes on the car, then you know that it's a good car.
Yeah.
That's why if I want to advise the governments to choose the right people, then they should look to Mercedes.
In that respect, the best if you Islam by following the Quran and the Sunnah is far superior than any other kind of label.
Yeah, but everybody is claiming. Everybody's claiming Quran and Sunnah, everybody.
No, but this is a command by our Creator. Follow the Quran and the Sunnah and the pious predecessors. We can't go wrong. This is the challenge that we're going to have. We've had historically, we will have in the future.
I think I agree with what you gentlemen are saying, because the key here is following the Quran and following the teachings of the Prophet, may God bless his soul. But I think again, if everybody is claiming to follow the teachings, how do you know who is actually swallowing the teachings and who is actually putting forward the teachings in such a way that is just superficial? But I think again, it's an important subject, but which needs to be, as both of you said, we need more time to break this down and get to the right point of it. Now the question which I think is quite important that we have to ask again is looking at the current scenarios of what is happening with ISIS. Now, do we see ISIS or the so-called Islamic State going back to having a physical caliphate, or do we think this is dead? From both of your experiences, I mean, and do we see Al Qaeda coming back? Let me start. Do you see Al Qaeda coming back as strong as it were beyond what ISIS has been, or this is just going to be a exchanging? ISIS coming, Al Qaeda then taking over. ISIS is this what we're seeing?
And Al Qaeda their currency has been devalued significantly. But what I do see is a re-emergence of a movement where I don't know who's going to choose the name, whether it's going to be the West or whether it's going to be the terrorists themselves or the extremists. But expect something new developing. It's already developed. It's actually something that will emerge very soon with the situation that we have in the South Asian context and the Middle East, especially now that we've had some new developments with regards to Israel and the UAE, with regards to what's happening in Turkey and with Cyprus and Greece, India and Pakistan and Afghanistan, China. All these new things that are coming in, that have been emerging and developing, we can expect a significant group that is going to emerge, whether it's ETIM and all of these combined, the Chechen liberation, whether it's a combination of all of them under one massive name, or whether it's AQ. I think AQ is now, like I said before, especially with regards to in Afghanistan, I think their value is completely gone. Same with ISIS, but I can see a significant network coming together under one banner, and I think that's where our problems lie.
What do you think the biggest loophole is in terms of government strategy on dealing with this, and how? I mean, I don't want you to say everything, but where is the biggest loophole? Where do you think governments have really missed it and big time?
These are some of the issues that have been ongoing, and we failed to address them or even acknowledge them. And as a result, we've allowed for an injustice environment to continuously grow and evolve. And this is where we are seeing, this is why I believe that what will emerge will be something that we've allowed to create. We've allowed to fester.
Yeah, thank you very much there. That's a good one. Husamuddin, now Hanif has spoken about injustice. Now you deal with a lot of the ideological component. Do you find yourself in a scenario where you're doing a good job in trying to fight the ideology, but somehow governments are doing a very good job in trying to increase the injustice?
Yes, I agree completely with Mr. Hanif. As long as there is injustice in the world, it's easy for the movements to recruit people, to find people to fight with them. And if they can use the ideology and call it Islam, then it's very easy for them. So we are working on different levels, of course. And as I pointed out during the program, I'm working on the balance of the people, and I cannot work on the global politics.
Yeah, but is this something that you let your clients know? You know, without being a government saying to them, "Okay, I can deal with the ideology, but whatever happens with the political aspect, you know, I can't do anything about that." Is this something you let them know?
Yeah, of course we talk about this injustice, and we have to talk about it, and we have to say also that this injustice, otherwise we are not authentic, we are not real, we are not trustable. We have to say it also, but we say, what can we do? If Allah is, Allah is one, and Allah ala kulli shay'in Qadir, and Allah is powerful over everything. So if He wants to change, He can change. What we can do on our level, we can make dua, we can pray to Allah to change, and what we can do, we do. Yeah. But to do violence and terrorist extremist attacks it's not the way, and it will not change it to the positive.
Yeah. So yes, thank you very much, gentlemen. I think the next program I'm going to be having today is going to be talking about Mali, especially the recent coup d'etat that has happened. There's been a lot of concern that the Al Qaeda movements there, they call themselves Janim, but also the ISIS movement, they may be able to take advantage of the insecurity happening. Both of you have been to Africa. You've been to Mali, I think. Hanif Qadir has been there, definitely, I know. And you guys have tried to advise the government, this government, in terms of how to deal with this issue. Do you see any concerns that the current chaos is something which these organizations are quite ready to step into that? Let me get Hanif's 2 minutes opinion on that, and I finish off with you, Husamuddin.
David, there's 100%, there is no doubt wherever there will be chaos and injustice or corruption and lack of governance, there will be a vacuum where Boko Haram, Al-Shabaab, these people, they will exploit it, because it's like when you go into a prison, like Osama just said, you can't disagree with the injustices. You have to accept that there is an injustice. And so we know that when we go in to work with individuals, we know that they are there because they have a sense of injustice, but against Islam. This is the same with Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram. They know the people are feeling an injustice against them, so they will gravitate to somebody who appreciates that and understands that. Whereas the government is in a state of chaos, institutions are in a state of chaos, they don't engage with the communities and the public, whereas others, where Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab do, then we are going to lose that ground. We're going to lose the space. And that's the space where you'll find a recruitment, you'll always find people willing to gravitate to somebody who appreciates and understands them. That's the space that we are not occupying, but we are denying. We are not occupying, but we're also allowing others to occupy.
Yeah, Husamuddin?
Yes, what is needed everywhere in the world is security, is justice, and it is economical
development,
providence, or how you say, prosperity.
Yeah, prosperity. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can reach it, and that is one of the problems in Mali, that it was not the case. So, of course, I'm not an expert of Mali, but I pointed out these three things, and I think.
No, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your contributions. Again, as we said, the ideology of these terrorist organizations, we agree that is almost the same. They use different push and pull factors, within different countries. We also agree that there is an interrelationship between the use of this ideology to influence people's behaviors and perceptions, people's actions, with some of the political and economic situations that happen in various countries. So it's important that governments are able to assist other imams and other solution providers, like you guys, to ensure that even if you're dealing with the ideology, but what about other push and pull factors? So I think it's fundamental to understand that winning the hearts and minds of the local population is an endeavor that requires not just dealing with the ideological aspect, but also dealing with some of the economic scenarios, some of the political scenarios, because terrorist organizations don't rely on the ideology alone. They rely on other aspects, other societal aspects, to engage their audience, to recruit people, to pushing their propaganda. So I really appreciate the expertise of Husamuddin Meyer, who is a well-respected imam, well-respected, counter-violent extremism expert. He works in a lot of countries. He's been to Africa. He deals with various governments, to advise them on how to approach this issue of ideology. I also want to really appreciate the efforts and continuous, engagement of Hanif Qadir, who somebody who knows all about, the operations of Islamic State ideology, of Al-Qaeda ideology. He continuously works with governments to deal with extremism, violent extremism. And for somebody who has been a former Al-Qaeda member, he's really turned things around in Europe and the rest of the world. And I really appreciate him joining us on this platform today. It's a one-hour project that we set up to do today. Gentlemen, we would come back again on this issue. Unfortunately, it's not something we can deal with just within an hour. But the key message is that if you understand the ideology of terrorist organizations, it is very easy for you to predict what kind of actions, what kind of perceptions, and what kind of propaganda they will push forward to their audience. So the ideology is very important because this is the foundation. And I appreciate my audience, for taking their time to listen to these experts. I want to say thank you to Mr. Joseph Otieno Adamson for this wonderful host today. And above all, we thank Africans in London Television for this program. We will see you again next week.
Thank you very much. Of course, you have been watching AIL TV. And now we must sign off because we are getting ready for 8 o'clock. Thank you.